So, um, this month we are going to be talking about a series, or we're going to be involved in a series called Journey. So, when we hear journey, what comes to mind? Distance, okay. A long trip. Anything else from this side? A destination. Right. So, a journey means that we're basically moving from one place to another. Right? And life in itself is a journey, not so? So it may not necessarily be walking with feet or driving in a car kind of journey, but when we're moving from point A to point B, that's a journey. So we have to ask ourselves, at what point of my journey am I at? And where am I going? Yeah? So today, we're going to be looking at who do I live for? And that's actually an important part of our journey, because who we're living for determines what we do, what we think, where we go, you know? And so I want to look at some things here, right? We're going to look at a couple of these sticky notes. Right, here we go. So I'm going to look at some of these, and I want you to reflect on them to see if they apply to you. All right? So you always agree to do something that you hate when you don't actually want to. You find it hard to express your own wants and needs. You don't voice your opinion because you don't know if others will agree. You don't usually say what you need to say because you don't want to hurt people. You're always afraid of disappointing other people. You find it hard to leave somebody you're dating because you fear that they'll be heartbroken when you do. And always trying to figure out what the other person wants you to do. Does any of this sound familiar? Yeah? When you might sit there or be standing and you're wondering, what do they want me to say? You know, you're in a conversation and you don't really want to comment because you're not sure what they actually want to hear. Or what happens when you need to go somewhere and you have no idea what to wear? Why? Because you don't know how people will see you or what they'll think of you when you put that on. So, if this sounds like you, you're the people pleaser. Right? Now, there are a lot of people pleasers about, so don't feel terribly, right? It's more common than you think, right? But it's important for us to know if that's actually where we fall, because what do we do about that, right? So if this is you, right, what do we do? Let's look at some scenarios just to ensure we know exactly if we are this people pleaser or not. So these two girls, right, they're talking. What do you see happening here? Anybody? Lying. Where is the line? What's the lie? What's going on? Yeah, so this girl over here, she's saying, oh my gosh, you're my best friend ever. I want to spend every day with you. The other girl is like, every day? No, so. Yeah, but then she goes along and say, yeah, girl, you know, you're my bestie. And it plays it off, but this is a familiar scenario, don't it? Yeah. Then we look at a work situation now. What's happening in this one? All right. So one of these guys here is afraid to share his opinion, right? Why is he afraid to share his opinion? Because he doesn't want to be wrong. He's concerned about what other people may say. And he may have a very good opinion. He may have a very valid opinion, but he's afraid to voice it. So we want to look at the background of a people pleaser. Like, how does somebody, let's look at some ways that persons become a people pleaser, right? So, in childhood days, right, we have a mommy or a daddy, some parent, auntie, teacher. You as a child, you have things you like and don't like, and you decide to tell mommy or daddy or auntie or grandma, I don't want this. Who tell you to say that? You get some cussing, and you say, what you say a while ago? Eh? What you just say? And then they start to make you feel bad about voicing your perspective on it. So what's the response in some of these situations? You just accept it. You say, okay, yes, mommy, sorry, mommy, okay, mommy. But what does that do in the future? You end up in a situation where you're now afraid to voice your opinion overall. After repeated situations like this, you now start to ask yourself, can I really voice my opinion? Right? So, some of us will keep it to ourselves unless we're absolutely sure that we can say it. Right? So now, poor little Jimmy has this friend Paul love ramp, and Jimmy can't take it. But guess what? Jimmy no hurt Paul's feelings. So him can't tell Paul say him not like the ramping, but it makes him uncomfortable. Is this a good scenario to be in? Is this a good situation? No. But what's the basis of it? You're trying to please the other person. Right? Now let's look at some other factors about the people pleaser. Pleasing people sounds like a good thing, but it's actually problematic because it's going to create things like confusion, doubt. You know, you don't like the situation, you don't like what the person is doing. You never want to do it in the first place, so you're feeling this resentment inside because you have to keep doing it, but the person probably don't even know. That's toxic, don't you think? So, and it can damage relationships over time. Imagine being with somebody for years and they don't even know that you don't like eating hot dog and they feed it to you every Friday. No, sir, that's, right? But the fact is, a people pleaser feels like they have no choice but to fulfill the expectations of others. And the basis of that, in many cases, is fear of abandonment. Right? Now, the thoughts of others matter too much to a people pleaser because they don't want to damage the relationship, lose the relationship, and so they do what they need to do that they think they need to do to maintain it, right? So they may not act unless they are confident that they're right. They may not speak unless they think what they say is acceptable, or how people respond to them is more important than what they actually have to say or do. And that can be problematic, right? So you have to ask the question, if people's thoughts matter that much, what about God's thoughts on you? Does God's thoughts about you matter? We have to ask ourselves this question, you know. Whose one are more important? Right? So let's look at two Bible verses. The first one is from Galatians, it's chapter 1, verse 10. And all of the verses here will be from the NASB. So it says, For am I now seeking the favor of people or of God? Or am I striving to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a bondservant to Christ. Now, what's that verse saying exactly? If it's a case that we are so caught up pleasing people, how can we actually serve the Lord and please Him? Because now the wire's getting crossed, right? We'll look at 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 4. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not intending to please people, but to please God who examines our hearts. So that tells us that God also looks at our motives right there, don't it? Okay, so I'm going to say something now. Don't take offense to it, it's just the facts, right? I say it with love. People pleasers are liars. Yeah, it sounds rough, but it's a fact. Think about it, right? So this girl here don't agree. She feel kind of offended. So say, liar, really? But for some people, they put their feelings, the feelings of their friends as a priority, and they do it to secure how they feel. It's for a good reason. But you might mean well, but the foundation of it is actually dishonesty. Right? And we have to recognize that. So, this guy, he says, I don't know his name. Anybody know his name? Paul Matthew is his name. All right, great. So, Paul Matthew says, but it's not my fault, It's how we grew up. But the thing is, even if that's the case, we have a responsibility as adults to improve ourselves. Yes or no? Right. And God can actually help us to do that. Right? So it's not just about us relying on figuring it out on our own. We actually have the ability to rely on God to help us do that. Yeah? Okay, so now we're going to look at what some people see as the other side of the spectrum. What is that? The selfish. The selfish. So you have people who say, okay, well, I'm the center of attention. It's all about me. Yeah. They think firstly about themselves, but this girl is asking a question again. What's her name? The other one was what was her name? Paul Matthew, right? So Paul Matthew. So what's her name? Mary Jane Clarkeisha. All right. I may not remember that name, but we'll try it again. So Mary Jane Clarkeisha says, hold on. What's wrong with being the center of attention? And the thing is, nothing is wrong with it, right? But you have to ask yourself the question, what's the motive behind it? Because Jesus, as we know, everybody used to follow him about the place. There used to be huge crowds that followed Jesus, right? He was the center of both good and bad attention. People wanted to kill him, people wanted to follow him, listen to him. Attention. So is anything wrong with attention in and of itself? No. But is that what you're chasing? Right? What's your motive behind everything you do? Right? So let's look at some signs of the self-centered. My needs come first, then yours. I feel uncomfortable when others outshine me. I do whatever it takes to get what I want. Right? I can't let people see me as weak or a failure. Why would that be considered as selfish? Not wanting people to see us as weak or a failure. Why is that selfish? Anybody? Because that does sound selfish, right? Huh? That's part of it. And it's actually connected to pride, right? Because a lot of the selfishness and pride can sometimes go hand in hand, right? In this situation here, it's the maintaining of a personal image, right? It's maintaining a personal image. And so you care more about that, maintaining who you are in the eyes of everybody else. So it's inward looking. That's why it's selfish. You understand? Right? So when I don't get what I want, I get mad or annoyed. I won't waste my time on it if I can't see how it benefits me. And I will only do it if it makes me look good. Now, these are just a few things that a self-centered person might say or think, right? Let's look at a few more here. They don't respect other people's boundaries. Who knows what a boundary is? A personal space, a line we're not to cross. Yeah, like a border. So all of us actually have boundaries, even if you don't realize it. All of us have boundaries. If I am supposed to walk up to Kamani and have an ice cream in my hand, and I decide to rub the ice cream on Kamani's head, Kamani is going to more than likely react to that. Whether he likes it or not, tells me where his boundary lies. Right? And that's how we determine people's boundaries. Even if they haven't expressed it, if somebody reacts negatively to something, it suggests that there's some sort of boundary there. Right? So we as people actually need to understand where our personal boundaries lie and make it clear to persons but selfish people generally don't respect boundaries. So they try to get whatever they want from other people, even if the other person doesn't want it. Right? They prefer to talk more than they listen. So you're talking to a selfish person, or maybe you're the selfish person and someone talking to you. And you just have this brilliant idea you want to share, and the person just keep talking, and you're like, hurry up, somebody can say what I want to say. Right? That's actually a selfish thing, because now your perspective on the matter, your opinion matters more than the person talking to you, and chances are they're the one that wanted help with something, so? But all of a sudden, your thoughts are more important than what they're saying. And they see relationships as a means to an end, right? So if I am gonna be friends with, let's see, who can I pick from the congregation? All right, so Ramar raised his hand. If I'm going to be friends with Ramar, I want to be friends with Ramar because I think he is cool, and therefore, if I am with him, then other people might think I'm cool. Is that a genuine reason to have a friend? No. What about Ashley is over there. I want to hang out with Ashley because Ashley always buy lunch for her friend. Yeah, man. Real friend that. Love it. But that's a selfish perspective, right? Because now I'm trying to see how I can benefit from this friendship. Let's look at these two young lovebirds, right? They're on a date here. What we see going on? What's happening? They focus on what they can get from each other. Both have selfish objectives. Yes. So we have this guy here. Him thinking about how good this girl look and how him friend them got jealous and all these things, and now he wants. So we don't know what this last line means, right? We don't know what he means by that, right? But whatever it is selfish, I'm assuming, right? And then this young lady, now she's looking at him rich, smart, he look cute, and she's like, oh my gosh, heart fluttering on all these things. Yeah, man, secure, locking this quick, right? Why? Because they're both looking at how they can benefit from each other. They're looking solely into how can this bond benefit me, right? What about two friends? No, this is not romantic. This is just two brethren. But what's happening in this one? Anybody see what's going on here? Yes, so this guy here, I'm assuming his name is Robert or something, right? And Robert are going bridging yard because him bridging have game. Right? That's all him friends with this guy for, because him have the PS5 and the everything, and him have access to this all the time. So yeah, that friend here, you have to keep that friend here. Right? What happened when the PS5 broke down? Now see him back again. Friendship done. Yeah. So, this girl now, what's her name again? Remind me, because I don't remember her name at all. Mary Jane, yes, right, there we go. Right now, she said she hates selfish people. Like, all they think about is themselves, and pleasing people is not as bad. Right? Because when you're pleasing people, you do nice things for them. So it's not that bad, but the thing is, the people pleaser is also selfish. Yeah. The people pleaser is also selfish. Why is that? Because, remember, they want to ensure that they don't lose this friend. They want to ensure that this family member doesn't explode on them and cuss them out and go on bad. They want to ensure that people don't look at them like they're a fool because they're not accepting what they're saying. They want to make sure that what they're wearing is accepted by everybody. So, as nice as they're being to everybody, they're actually thinking about themselves. It's crazy, don't it? Yeah. So, how is it selfish if I'm doing what makes them happy? How that makes sense? So we have to ask ourselves these questions, right? We have to question the motive, right? Why are you doing it, right? Are you doing it to prevent yourself from feeling guilty? Are you doing it so that the person won't be mad or sad because of you? Are you doing it so that you won't lose the benefits of the friendship or the person that you love? Are you doing it knowing that when they're happy, they will make you happy? All of those things are selfish. So, if the primary motivation for what you say or do is to benefit you, then it is selfish. All right? In other words, we're primarily living for ourselves, and that's what makes it selfish. So if we look at some Bible verses here, all right? We have Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. I believe that is the incorrect reference. The correct reference is right. So Philippians 2, 3-4. That's not Galatians 1, verse 10. It says, "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others." All right? So, what's the most significant thing that we might notice in this? Because we see where the people pleaser might look out for the other interests of people. And we see where selfish people might sometimes do that too. But it says here, consider one another, consider other people as more important than yourselves. All right? So it's no longer focusing on how do I protect me? How do I ensure that I am safe from what they say and do? How do I ensure that I get what I want? No, it's more about the other person, because now they are more important. All right? The next verse says, "No one is to seek his own advantage, but rather that of his neighbor." Of course, I don't mean your next door neighbor, right? We just mean other people that you interact with, right? So now, why this name just now stick? LaQuisha, Mary Jane, yes, that's right. So she says no. We literally just said we shouldn't please other people. Yet those verses are saying we should. So let us just clarify, right? Because we don't want to get it confused. They're not saying that we should please people. They're saying our motives matter, right? So it's now a focus on the importance of the other person, right? Not necessarily not necessarily doing what we're doing because we want to benefit, but because it's right. We can see a difference between those two. Doing it because it's right versus, there's a big difference, right? So it's about love. It really and truly comes down to love, right? That's the foundation of what actually doing good for others is based on. So let's look at another verse. Mark chapter 12, verse 28 to 31. So we don't necessarily have to read all of it, you can. But basically, there are some persons talking to Jesus. They want to ask him some questions, some very tricky questions, right? And one particular person asks him, right, what is the most important commandment? Because they're trying to trick him to get him to say something that, can slip him up. But Jesus responds by saying, the foremost or the first important commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So the same kind of love and care you put into taking care of yourself, loving your neighbor and the other persons you interact with, your schoolmates, your co-workers, random people you buck up on the street. You should love them just as much as you love yourself, right? No less. You can love them more if you want, but no less, right? And Jesus says, other than loving God and loving other people, there is no greater commandment. So it is the most important thing, love, genuine love, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 47 says, and this is, anybody knows this verse? I'm sure we know this verse, right? It talks about what love is, right? Because some of us, we may not be sure what love is. So, love is patient, all right? Love is kind. Love is not jealous. So if you're jealous of somebody, you don't love them, all right? Love does not brag. It is not arrogant. It does not act disgracefully, It doesn't seek its own benefit. So it's not selfish. It does not provoke. It does not keep on account of wrongs suffered. So in other words, this long list of things that people do to you in the past, you need to get rid of that, forgive them, move on, because in doing that, you are doing what God has called us to do, which is to love one another. If you have a long list of things and you're not letting it go, that is not love. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but it rejoices with, what's this word here? Truth. So on to the people pleaser. You have to be more honest. Yeah. And it keeps every confidence. It believes in all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And so, this verse gives us an understanding of what it is that God is asking us to do in terms of loving other people. And it connects both to the people pleaser and to the one that doesn't please people, because they're both selfish, remember? Right? So, you have to ask yourself, no. Who are you living for? Right? We have a choice. And we have people. We can live for people if we want. We can do what they say, and we can do what they tell us to do, and we can try to have them think the best of us and, determine what we do, what we drive, what we eat, what we wear. You can do that if you want to, because let me tell you guys, God is not forcing you to follow him, right? The devil might do that. God doesn't do that. Right? God doesn't force anybody. So you can choose to serve people if you want. It's your choice. You can choose to serve yourself, but you can choose to serve God. Now, is there any benefit to serving God, of course. Anybody knows the intentions of the devil? What is his main mission? Kill, steal, and destroy. So who wants to follow him? Raise your hand. Who wants to do that? Any followers of the devil want to choose? No? No? Nobody? Because here's the thing. If God is telling us to love people, that means that when we don't love them, what are we doing? We're following the devil. Yeah. So, we have a choice to make, right? Matthew chapter 6, verse 24 says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other." Now, this mentions money, but it applies to things beyond this. Disagree or agree? It can't be that you devote yourself to one thing because the other stuff them going to fall secondary. So you have to ask yourself, who do we want to live for? Who do we want to dedicate ourselves to? And we have to ask the question, who we live for, because if we don't really think about it, like if you don't really meds it, like you will not realize sometimes. Because a lot of us here are Christians, right? And we will say to ourselves, well, because I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ, I'm automatically living for Jesus, but is that really the truth? What are your motives for the things that you do? Right? Do are his thoughts more important to you, or are the thoughts of other people? Are you more important in your mind than everybody else? Your desires, your will, your success? Or is God's will, God's desires more important? You have to ask yourself, because sometimes we miss it, right? And for those of us who are not Christians, who have not made that decision, right? You have to ask yourself, who do I want to live for? Because it's a black and white situation, Automatically, if we're not living for Christ, we are living for the enemy. Now, it sounds kind of harsh to pick between the two, but that's the reality of our existence. And it's not something that we can control. And the fact is, God loves us. God wants us as a part of his family, right? God actually cares about us, right? The devil, on the other hand, he will give us nice things. Don't get it wrong, he will give us nice things, but at what expense? When you listen to him, when you do all the things that you know that you shouldn't do, what is really the gain from that? What's more important? Is it more important to live it up on earth here, in this life? Or is it more important to ensure that we are with the God of creation who loves us, who has given us these guidelines and instructions in the Bible, not to restrict us, but to help us to navigate this very chaotic world, right? It's not there to tell us that we cannot have fun. It's not there to tell us that, we can't pursue certain dreams and goals. No, it's not saying that. But there are things and consequences that come when we follow the enemy. And if we're not living under God's protection, it's a big problem for us. All right, so you have to ask yourself, who do you want to live for? God is not going to force any of us to pick him, because you ever realize that with temptation, it's very pressuring. You ever notice it? Like you fight it, but you're just strong. God ever force himself on you like that? No, because that's not how God operates. That's not how God operates. And you have to ask yourself the question, if the devil forces all these things on you, if the devil tries to trick you up into situations and pull you down and destroy you and all these things, isn't it better if we're living for God and under his protection? All right? So, who do we live for? Is it God? Is it other people? Is it ourselves? If you choose to live for God, what does He expect from us? You know? How do we do it? We look at Romans 12, verse 2, and it says, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, which is good and acceptable and perfect." Yeah? And what this verse is essentially saying, everybody, is that when we have the right mind, when we understand certain truths about life, when we know what's really going on, right? Because if you look at the whole people-pleasing situation, the selfishness situation, if we actually understood why we got there, and if we actually understood the benefit of not being that way, would things not be better? Yeah, they would. And so we have to renew our minds with biblical truth and hear what God has to say so that we can actually live a healthier life. Yeah? So we have to make a choice. Do we live for God and be secure under His covering, have His guidance, help us to navigate the confusions and the stress and the weird situations, and they help us to figure out those complicated childhood experiences that messed us up and brought us to this place in adulthood that we're still wondering how to figure it out. Because trust me, a lot of people go through that, wondering how to correct what was made incorrect when they were younger. God has the ability to help us with that. And it all comes from the renewal of our minds, the receiving of truth from God. All right? And we can only get that if we choose to live for Him. All right? So, who will we choose, church? Thank you.